Hello and welcome to the Friday wrap up powered by the Goxstein News Network. I am your host, Landy, and today is December 19th, 2025. We're going to take a look at Bitcoin today for this market update to start with. And then we will go ahead and take another look at traditional markets and see where the week ended. We'll talk a little bit about what to look for over the weekend. If we do see some price action actually kick off to either the upside or downside. But more importantly, it's going to be about where things close and kind of the outlook, and a little bit of a recap coming into kind of take a look at where the traditional markets closed at coming into a shortened week next week. So we did have a few economic events as well. Not really going to get into it. Most of it was priced into markets. Let's just start with Bitcoin here. On the daily, you'll notice that I'm pretty zoomed in on the daily and just kind of pointing out that we're still in a compression. This is just a different look at kind of where the levels are that I've been talking about, as it relates to the chart that I typically show, which is a weekly chart. Not much has changed, right? I know that a lot have made a big deal about this being a bear flag after a big downtrend, but not a whole lot has happened just yet. Now here on the daily, you can see that we've essentially been sweeping this closing low right around the 84,684 region. And to the top side, on the way down, we had Bitcoin spike the weekly at 93.5 to 94K, which was a big level, right? 93.5, got hit on the next candle here, but low at 93,951, which is $94,000 essentially, which was a daily level between 94 and 96 before getting to the weekly at 93.5. Kind of just hanging out there. We did see this was, by the way, this was all the way back up at 107. We had the move down to another big weekly, 102.5. We had to move down to 98 to 101, which is a weekly level. You see that it kind of closed in there and then retested that and then fell down to the next big kind of daily weekly level here. Bitcoin kind of running the top side continuously around 94.5. And then just kind of testing the downside area of interest here while in a daily compression. So realistically, we had a little bit of an uptrend here with higher lows and higher highs on the swings and closes, right? And then a lower low structure that has not closed on a low just yet. Now I don't know, it depends on your indicator. Some would say like, okay, we'll look at this bearish close to this bullish close. The low is set on a close. We had the swing lower high to swing lower low down here. So it's set. Well, I don't really consider this set. I would have need to see a close above 89,450 or so where we got some swings. And realistically, it would have to be above there at around 90,336 to 90,400 or so to then test the top side of this consolidation structure up here and break out above the weekly at 93.5 to 94 to test 94.5 to 96, so on and so forth, 96, 98, 98 to 101. I've talked about that a lot. I'll show the weekly chart in just a second here, but this is essentially to show that we've been in a big consolidation for quite some time. Now, of course, we have the wick to another weekly, which is around 80,500. But realistically, since closing down here, closing this low right around 84,684, we've just been going sideways. And, people are getting frustrated. And you can tell just by looking at the timeline. Since the actual close of this low came in, we've been down here for 27 days. And if you incorporate the dump off candle, it's going to be 28 days as of the Friday close. Now, of course, the Saturday candle is open because it is Saturday for Bitcoin. I get this question a lot. Bitcoin's close open is 0 UTC, which is going to be 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So Let's take a look at a few things I haven't checked on in a while. Daily, the daily stochastic momentum indicator. This is not a Stoch RSI. This is a regular Stoch measuring close over close price momentum. It is, it's in an area where it could start to turn up, but again, it's over the weekend, lower liquidity. I would just watch it carefully. There is a metric for this. It's going to be 86,700 to turn this back to the upside, but 86,700 on the chart doesn't do too much, right? Like it can still turn momentum back to the upside. We're trading at 88. If it trades and closes, now this is based on closes. If it closes above 86,700, it's going to turn up. That, a low isn't even set on a close for me here. RSI wise, not too much happening either. Just kind of coming off the bearish control zone or the edge of the bearish control zone here. Nothing too crazy. In fact, like nothing crazy at all about this. I don't really find this very interesting. My zone's kind of got a little goofed up here now that I'm looking at it in terms of the fill. I'll have to adjust this. Yeah, not right now, but I'll have to adjust this. Essentially, should be 62 to 80 up here with a little bit of a midline in between, not 62 to 100 for the fill. 85 being an extreme level, and then right around 38 to 20 with 15 being an alert level. I'm not sure what happened with this indicator when it updated, but that's okay. Not a big deal. But, after hitting the edge of the bearish control zone here, trying to get a bounce up, we have not a whole lot happening here. With this being a lower low, with higher low RSI versus, this guy over here, if it does set a low, you'll see some bearish divergence building, but it's nothing crazy. We need to see Bitcoin trading back to the top side of this consolidation and then out the top side for it to actually mean anything, in my opinion. So let's go ahead and turn on the typical support and resistance areas of interest here. Yeah, you'll have to forgive my voice. It has been a long week with a lot of talking across various spaces and live streaming events. So again, we saw in my criteria was below $86,000. We would need to see, kind of looking at 86, 84. We hit the 84.4 area. Anywhere below there, we start looking at this is essentially 84. If you average across across the spot charts, which I like to use here on Coinbase, it's 83.8. But 86 to 84 on any break below 86 was kind of my call on any kind of break and close below 89 here, which is that common swing, higher low, lower high inflection point. And we can see how that is acting as an inflection point, especially on closes. But realistically, even getting slight expansion to the downside outside of the bottom side of the weekly here, deviations are fine, swings are fine, because we would need to see closes below 83.5 to 84K to actually kick off expansion down to the next weekly level. And that remains the same, right? If Bitcoin's trading and closing below $89,000 and keeps dropping 86 and eventually heads down here, if it hasn't already tested 83.5 to 84 right around the swings here, I'd be looking for it to do so. And then it's on closes below there. Well, also closing below the lower second standard deviation would kick off expansion with targets down to $80,000 or 80,500 at this weekly level. And that's where I would be looking for a swing of the $80,000 level down to 78 as a possibility. Doesn't mean that it has to fill out the whole range there between those two weekly closes between 80,500 and 78, but that'd be a very highly likely target, which, by the way, has the potential to go for the mid 70s, right? Which is, that monthly higher low swing down here at that 74, so 74 for $75,000, right? Very, very close target, right? At this particular moment for Bitcoin. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for it to do that, maybe even go for more if we did see daily expansion to the downside. So the way that I'd be looking at that is, any closes below $83.5 to $84,000. We would get expansion to the downside, targeting, 80 to 78 initially, and then it's all about continuation of that expansion. If it didn't already hit it and then start closing in there, then be about continuation lower on daily closes, possibly swings. Now to the upside, back above 89, we can start targeting the wicks up here again, between 90 to 90,400. Any closes, we start looking to $92,000. Of course, that's the close open right around here, which is on a prior daily level that is inside of this big weekly area. Above there, 93.5 to 94 is kind of the area to look, 94 to 96. And essentially it's taking it like $2,000 at a time here, in terms of levels for liquidity and closing structures. So 94 to 96 at the point of control here. That would be expansion into the point of control, because above the upper second standard deviation around $94,000 or slightly above $94,000, then, we're looking for expansion into the point of control. We see some swings over here as well. But if we start seeing closes above the weekly, this is the way that I look at it. Daily closes above the weekly at 93.5. We're probably already swinging up to 94 to 96. And then it's about looking up to 96 to 98. If we start seeing closes above 96, I'd be looking, if we hadn't already tried for 98 to 101, I would be looking for moves to this weekly at between 98 to $101,000. Even above there, I'd be looking to the next weekly level at 102.5 to this fib up here at 103,650 or so, somewhere around there. And this is a big area of resistance. So even if Bitcoin bounces aggressively, and there's a reason why I'm going to call this out, because we're going to look at the weekly in a second, and there's some opportunity if the bulls hold this range, and especially hold the swing low here at $80,500, $80,000 on a close or so. It has the chance to test the 98 to 101 on longer term time frames, and then possibly up into this wider overhead area of resistance between 102 and 103, 107, 108, and then the top side of this cluster of weeklies up here between 102.5 to 107, 108, which is a higher low structure, and then the high side structure at that 111 area, which is kind of like 109 to 111. Just a really a zone full of weekly closes. And this is fair game if we start seeing closes back above, 107, 98 to 101. It's fair game on daily closes for expansion, especially, but it's all about once it finds a high in the daily, where does it find, support on one of the major weekly levels. Like a reclaim of 98 to 101, great. But realistically, at the highs here, where the primary support that was lost on the weekly closes, yeah, we got some dailies down and to perfectly hit the fib extension there. But it's all about 107 to 108 on a reclaim. Things get really interesting above there, because I think shorts start to cover if we break out the top side of the weekly here at 93.5, 94. And start going for that 98 to 101, we see shorts covering into that area. And then above, shorts covering more aggressively into the 107, 108 weekly. If that were to happen, then, I don't even see shorts panicking, I guess you could say, or short squeeze occurring. When people think of short squeezes, they think like everybody's getting liquidated. Well, that's because you're looking at, typically the exchange perp markets for crypto. That data is a little dicey, to be quite honest. I don't know how much I trust that it's liquidations. I think they include a lot of stops in that, but who knows? I think that shorts would aggressively be covering, possibly being pushed out of position or getting a squeeze above 112. That's where things get interesting into some of the areas overhead. But it's all predicated on Bitcoin holding the low on a close, especially for like a weekly, which does, mean that Bitcoin can do a lot of things. It can swing all the way down. If it closes back above, the low, can still get that opportunity for upside. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because if we go over to the weekly, we'll wrap this up pretty quickly here in a moment. If we go over to the weekly and we take a look at what's going on here, it's just a big old consolidation, right? We have the swing lower low. We have a swing lower high on that bearish inverted hammer, but not a whole lot. Not a whole lot has happened in terms of continuation to the downside just yet. And it's all about, that daily area at 83, at 84. Then we're starting to look down towards, maybe even a swing. We have there at like 83, but this is going to update, probably be more towards that monthly level I've talked about, at 82 and a half. But realistically, it's all about this $80,000 close, 80,000 and a half to 78 initially with this expansive structure on the weekly. The other thing to pay attention to is if this consolidation just starts to resolve to the upside above around that 94 and a half, to the 98 to 101 area, it has a high likelihood to go and test where the basis band is, which is going to be around a level of like 105 or so. And we do have, essentially 104 and a half to 105 over here as well, which is likely where the basis band is going to start to come in, maybe a little bit towards that macro fib level at 103, 650, 103 and a half as well. We'll see on the weekend. But more importantly is we're starting to get pretty deep down there. I don't think it's ready yet. To be quite honest, we'll find out this weekend into next week. But 84,800, essentially $85,000 prior daily inflection point. By the way, for those that remember back here. On the daily after the lows broke and we were getting that lower high, $85,000 acted as a daily inflection point in this area. We're looking at the weekly, of course, now, but that is, if that area is held on a weekly, we start to get momentum turning back to the upside. Doesn't rule out swings to the downside, but starts to look like, likely have to head up for liquidity. Nothing doing on RSI here. Just like it's kind of a big old nothing burger on RSI here. So that kind of gives me pause. It's going to be all about closes, kind of just right around the bearish control zone here. Maybe we can go to the 5-day and find something interesting. And look, there's not actually much interesting going on the 5-day here, but also, early indication here is that we have a counter signal with momentum turning to the upside here. But that's going to only be maintained on closes above $86,700, $87,000 or so. And Bitcoin's kind of right on the edge. So it's either continuation or try to bounce or go and test those lows. And that's really where we're at right now and kind of what a lot of market participants are waiting for, a lot of analysts are waiting for. And then it's all about the expansion from there. I would say that, you can see the lows are in play from like a 5-day, but not too much else is going on. It's been kind of boring, and you can tell on the timeline people are driving themselves nuts, and this is driving them nuts. So, all right, let's go to traditional markets and look at where the week ended for Dow. We did get on the daily, we got some of our targets hit to the upside and the downside. Weekly opened higher and then traded down. Not too much concerning about this. There could be some downside still in the cards here, but as long as Dow is trading above and closing above the upper first at 47,600 to around 48,000, right? 47,950. Nothing too crazy. I would be looking for the top side to continue to get run towards that upper second at currently 48,730 or so. This is going to likely track sideways and up a little bit more towards 48,750, but maybe even a chance for the highs at 48,880 to 48,900. that's a realistic way of looking at it. But if we do see, early portion of next week start dropping the upper first, we're probably in for correction coming into January back towards the 47.3 area. But so far, I don't really have too much else to say on that regard. We are lining up for a bit of a Stoke turn back up or cross back up within the context of a bullish control zone here. Closes above 47.955, right? That is what happened this week. So we haven't quite seen the high in as well. So it's all about watching to see if we actually get a high in next week. And the only way to really do that would be seeing closes below 47.850. Then we would see a high in, likely get another, we would get another bearish divergence if that did happen, but nothing too crazy here for Dow just yet. And then when looking at NASDAQ, NASDAQ avoided closing a lower high here. Nice move down to the basis band. We were looking for that, talked about that earlier this week. And didn't close above the upper first, but if it can regain the upper first and next week and close anywhere above 25,377, that would actually be a higher low swing with a higher low close. But obviously it needs to break back above 25,835 up here or thereabouts to go and test that upper second standard deviation and the highs again, just above 26,000 at 26,100 to the actual all-time high there at 26,182, 26,200. Continuation, by the way, above there would start to target up towards, that would actually target another expansion up, likely a price replace band somewhere around the mid 2600s at first, 26,500 or so on the dailies, and then possibly even up to the weeklies towards 26,800 to 900. That would actually look kind of wild. And that would be a very different outlook than many have on the market for NASDAQ right now. SPY avoided closing a double top up here. Did it? Yeah, it avoided closing the double top. Yeah, I looked at this earlier. I'm not sure why I'm acting like I'm surprised. And it closed above the upper first. This is actually what the bulls wanted to see. Nice long swing. It is a hammer. Of course, it's a bearish hammer, so many are going to call it all over and down towards that basis band. Honestly, getting down towards the 667 to 669, which, was what many were looking for, but we got a 671 spike, which is this open right here. And anywhere below there, it's really about that 667. You can just call it 670 to the basis band on the weekly, which is currently at 664, 665 area. And then below there, the actual closing low here at 664 to 665. Anywhere below there, we're starting to look down to, 653 to 650 around that lower first. But what I will tell you from a volatility perspective, the bulls getting the close back above the upper first band or one standard deviation away from the basis band up here gives them the opportunity to run the highs again. Above 690, it's going for a new high, 693, 695, 700s on the board, right? So that's kind of my outlook on it. I know that many assume double top is in, it's already done and over with, but I wouldn't necessarily be looking at this that way. This has been a fairly lengthy recap of what's going on, but I do think it's important to kind of understand what's going on headed into the holiday week. So just keep a close eye on Bitcoin. Right now, a whole lot of nothing going on, but these weeklies are all inside bars of this mid to late November, right? Candle, and not much has happened. So it's all about if this is going to resolve to the downside or just test it or resolve back to the upside for a nice bounce. I'm going to tell you my personal opinion, and we have to wait for confirmations on the dailies to start confirming this. My personal opinion is that we get a bounce from in this zone here, maybe even the closing zone, and test up further. Now, that does mean that if it fails to get weekly closes above that 94,640, meaning the daily can bounce wherever the hell it wants. But if we see a failure to close the weekly above the 94 and a half on some charts, 94,640 here, I wouldn't be looking for too much more to the upside, especially if it already tested on a swing. But I'd be looking for a bounce to maybe start get rolling here. But obviously don't rule out downside swings and obviously downside continuation. This is an expansion after all. And any closes back below the lower second here on the weekly would put it below all of these swings, testing down to the next swing at 80,000, that weekly 78, so on and so forth. And you can see the low 70s is where the lower third is. And that's likely if we saw the mid 70s, that monthly at 74, $75,000 drop, that's likely where we'd head next, right? Is the prior cycle highs and these highs over here. So just understand the lay of the land. You have a wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that being said, Landy out. Take care. Talk to you Monday.